Everyone, and thanks again for sticking with us. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed his first bill into law of this session. It will officially create the state's own DOGE office aimed at streamlining red tape and regulation, particularly for businesses here in Texas.
Well, that is not the only notable development this week at the Texas Capitol. Democrats in the House could be seeking retribution for Republicans not putting private school subsidies on the ballot for voters to decide. We're going to talk through all of this now, as usual on Thursdays, as we do with two former state lawmakers. First, Dennis Bonnen, former Speaker of the House, who represented Southeast Texas. Mark Strama served as a representative for the Austin area. So thanks so much to both of you for being back. We want to start with that kind of drama over the constitutional amendments. We saw that going on earlier this week in the House. Constitutional amendments could face hurdles there in the House. We're already seeing that happen. We saw that measure fail to get enough support on Wednesday, something that really seemed to be a non-controversial measure in and of itself. Before we get into the why of why this happened and the strategy of what's going on here, we do want you to explain for people, what are these constitutional amendments? How are they tied to specific legislation, and what does it take to pass them usually?
So not normally, but in some instances, there are usually anywhere from 10 to 20 constitutional amendments. And so there'll be what's called enabling legislation that'll pass with a majority of the members in the House and the Senate. And then the Constitution, to change our Constitution, you need a 2/3 vote. So you in the House, you need 100 votes. And that's what's happening. This is Democrats, there are 88 Republicans, so the Democrats are saying, we won't provide you the 12 votes to get your constitutional amendment. And so the enabling legislation usually says, we want to cut property taxes by $6 billion, and then you need a constitutional amendment to raise the homestead exemption to enact that $6 billion, or a piece of that $6 billion property tax relief. So I know you want to get to it in a minute, but it's sort of the Democrats, I get their strategy, but they're also backing themselves into a corner, because do they really want to be the reason that there's not more money for water infrastructure, there's not more money for property tax reductions? I think they're putting themselves in a weird place.
Yeah, each session, these constitutional amendments advance. We voted on these over a number of times over the past few years. But Mark, over to you. At least 50 Democrats, as Dennis was mentioned, would have to at least support a state constitutional amendment for it to advance in the House in particular. And yesterday that did not happen with a property tax measure, as we mentioned. It's reported this is maybe over pushback to the voucher legislation that advanced in the House. What do you think of that strategy?
Let me add one bit to the context first. The context is, just because people get confused by this, the state constitution, unlike the United States Constitution, is actually a really detailed document, and it's got a lot of antiquated provisions in it. So every session we put constitutional amendments on the ballot. It requires 2/3 in both houses, and then a simple majority of the voters of Texas have to approve those amendments. So it's very common to have constitutional amendments at the state level, unlike the amendments to the federal Constitution, which are very rare and have a higher threshold. What do I think of the strategy? Look, in the past, the question is, the Democrats are in the minority. They are on the right side of popular opinion on the question of vouchers. They're even more on the right side of popular opinion when they said, let's just simply let the voters vote on it. We know they're in the right side of popular opinion on that because the Republicans wouldn't let the voters vote on it. So then you're in the minority and you say to yourself, what leverage do I have? I am speaking on behalf of a majority of the people of Texas. How can I try to influence public policy? And what they have is that they're not a majority, but they're greater than a third. There are two ways that influence can be exercised. In the past, it's been exercised through a thing called a quorum break. That's an extreme measure to take, and the times when Democrats have taken that measure, meaning they've taken their keys out of their desk and they've left the Capitol so that the House could not do business. The reason that's relevant is it takes 2/3 of the members present for the House to conduct business. So if 1/3 leaves, they can't do anything. The Democrats have done that in the past on issues that they thought were unfair in a political way, that stacked the deck in a way that Democrats couldn't even represent their constituents fairly. In this case, they're proposing a different way to leverage their 1/3 power in the House, and that is to say, we're not going to support any constitutional amendments until we get something in return on this issue of vouchers. look, how does it play as a matter of strategy? Dennis is right. It's tough to hold together when the issues that you're blocking have to do with water and taxes. That's, I think what it tells you is that's how upset Democrats are about the way the voucher vote went.
Dennis, do you think that the Democrats can potentially gain anything from doing this as a negotiating tactic?
I think they're trying to. I doubt they will, to be truthful, because if I was Speaker at the moment, which I'm obviously not, I would have been polite, respectful, and said, if you want to kill property tax reductions for your constituents, if you want to kill water infrastructure for your constituents, we have the ad ready to go. Let me know.
Yeah, so you see this maybe having some sort of electoral pushback against them.
Absolutely. And I thought Mark was going to say it, and I'm not being critical, but every time they took their key and left, it didn't go well for them. It never got better after they came back, politically or policy. And this isn't to that extreme. I don't see this improving their situation. And Mark made the comment, and he's right. This is about the Republicans voting down, having a referendum on school choice. Problem is, the governor's about to sign that bill. There's nothing to be done there. And so they're now walking themselves into a bizarre place. They can't affect that anymore. And they made a great fight. I think their constituents know how opposed they were, but they're now telling their constituents, I'm not as interested in your property taxes and home affordability. I'm not as interested in water and clean water and those type of things, which is not where they stand, in fairness to these Democrat members. But they've put themselves in a box, and there's a long way to go to hold that line also. And look, one thing we know about Democrat and Republican members, they only need 12. They'll get 12.
You mentioned the governor there. I do want to ask about that because this could likely impact some of his priorities. But I want to give you any chance to respond or anything to add to that about what this could do for public opinion of Democrats as they kind of make this stand.
That question, they have better knowledge of what polling suggests. They're feeling it in their districts. I feel it when I talk to people about politics just out and around the community. The Democratic base feels like this voucher thing is a bridge too far. I mean, Democrats have lost on a lot of issues over the past several years, abortion probably being the one that had the most impact. The voucher vote feels like the reaction I'm feeling from the Democratic base is similar to the reaction I felt on the issue of abortion. This is just a very visceral issue for the Democratic base. To your point that it doesn't go well for Democrats when they did something like a quorum break, it doesn't hurt them in safe Democratic districts, and most of them are in safe Democratic districts. So those 12 votes you're talking about aren't going to be that easy to find because of, as I always say, gerrymandering, distorting the political process. If it weren't for gerrymandering, you wouldn't have a bunch of Democrats willing to block property tax relief. But if it weren't for gerrymandering, you also wouldn't have had the vote you had on vouchers.
One quick point. Yeah, they were real upset about abortion, and they didn't win a single election, statewide or otherwise. I mean, and I make that point not to be critical, but everyone, and I even wondered, well, is this going to drive a turnout, change a little bit of result? No.
I want to return a little bit here. You mentioned the governor. Several of his priorities, his emergency items this session would require voter approval through a constitutional amendment, bail reform, property taxes, as we've been saying. So could this kind of stand derail some of his priorities, and what would the impacts of that be on the outcomes of this session?
Can I jump in on this?
Absolutely.
Every session in late April, the most common topic of conversation is it's going to be a special.
Right.
We're going to have a special.
I mean, and
sometimes we do.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we do. I'm not criticizing the question.
No.
It's the right question. Sometimes we do end up having a special. I wouldn't, cancel plans yet. I mean, I think that
So,
usually they work something out.
Yeah, correct. And to that, again, not to be overly harsh towards these Democrat members, I think what the governor, and he's proven it on school choice, I think what the governor is saying, you want to kill property tax reductions for your constituents? You want to kill water infrastructure for your constituents? You want to kill taking really bad people off the streets and bail reform? Thank you. And I'll bring you right back and we'll do it all again. And if you want to kill it all again, thank you. He'd prefer them not to, But these are not good political issues for Democrat members, and particularly those that could be in a vulnerable district, which you're right, they're not as many.
I mean, I was going to
get
say,
it, they're not as
who's
many.
he going to go after on property taxes? They're all in safe districts.
I think
because of
property taxes
gerrymandering.
actually, the gerrymandering is, I mean, anyone.
In a Democratic
it makes a
primary, I
difference.
don't think so.
I think property
Look,
taxes
I'm not
good,
saying
but
you're not wrong. In a general election, I wouldn't want to have to run on having opposed the property tax relief bill. None of them have to face a competitive general election. That is
I
the
wouldn't want to run.
profound dysfunction
Look,
in our democracy.
The
right
thing
now.
I'm the farthest from is what a Democratic primary sounds like, because I think
Yeah, that's
AOC is
right.
the new leader of your party, which was baffling and amazing at all at the same time for me. But I don't think I'd want to run in South Texas on, I refuse to support lowering your property taxes. I refuse to support taking bad people off the streets. I don't think that'd be, even in a Democratic primary in the Valley.
Just
I wouldn't want to
remember,
run that
you're
race.
running against another Democrat in that
I agree.
race, and you're talking about
Look,
vouchers.
I get it. I don't understand what AOC's leadership is going to bring you, but
Well,
I admit I could be wrong.
If we want to, let's talk national politics next week. Let's do that.
That's a big
I'm anxious
conversation
for
there
that
that we may not
discussion.
have time for here
Tease for
today.
next week for another conversation. But we appreciate you all both diving into some speculation at times and some of the implications of all this. But Dennis and Mark, thank you again for being here for that. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.